Good day, everybody. This is the Hawk. It's Independence Day, 4th of July, United States. It's when we celebrate the independence from England, where we became a free nation under God, where people are free, free of religion, free of control, free of government, to express our feelings with freedom, not to be controlled. That's why we became independent. Today, I'll explain the history of why the United States became independent, how this came about, and why we have this nation today. And given the situation what we are seeing in the streets of the United States today, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and all these liberal organizations should be ashamed of themselves. For the men who sacrificed everything to give us this nation should be honored today, as should our flag. To all my subscribers, I appreciate the likes and the shares and your subscriptions. We're almost to 20,000 now and growing every day. I thank you for that. I thank you for all the signatures on the petition to bring sanctions on South Africa and many, many other things, and the acknowledgement that there is farm murders in South Africa. But that's not why we're here. We are here today about Independence Day. We all go drink and celebrate and eat turkey and go spend the day camping. But we must remember what this day is all about and why. And especially today, with what is happening, where our historical monuments are being desecrated. Good or bad, they're still monuments. These are our history. We mustn't forget this. And to all the liberal politicians and mayors and governors that are too scared to stand up for what is right in America, then maybe you shouldn't be in power. Maybe you shouldn't be in this position. Maybe it's stronger people with the will of the people, not the will of anarchists, communists, Muslims with extreme ideas. It is time to take our country back. This is not about a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. This is about what is right and what is wrong, and why we are proud of our flag and why we are proud of our nation. Nothing more. The American War of Independence was started in 1775, ended in 1783. It consisted of the original 13 colonies. Britain basically had neglected them, and these colonies were looking after themselves. They were taxing these people. Britain wanted to expand, so they passed the Navigation Act in 1763. This provoked unrest in the 13 colonies. And with this unrest came the Boston Tea Party. So in 1773, the British Parliament passed the Intolerable Act. They closed off all trade to the colonialists? Well, the colonialists decided in their first Continental Congress, they boycotted all British goods. They then called for the Second Continental Congress and appointed George Washington in June 1775 as the commander-in-chief to create the Continental Army to oversee the siege of Boston. In 1775, the Oliver Petition, or Oliver Branch Petition, was answered by King George III, where he proclaimed rebellion. Congress, or the Colonial Congress, declared a Declaration of Independence on 1776. After the eviction of the British from Boston in 1775, Congress then sponsored an attack on British Quebec. After many skirmishes between the British and the American forces, Washington in Valley Forge in that winter built a professional army, and the American victory at Saratoga convinced the French to enter the war and assist the Americans in independence from the British in 1778. To further help the American situation, the Spanish governor in Louisiana cleared the British forces from the Spanish territories, and with the help of the American privateers, supplied the Americans. This helped Washington expel the British forces from Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, and cut the British military assistance from the Indians in the interior South. Howard, who was in charge at that time, was replaced by General Sir Henry Clinton. He mounted an attack called the Southern Strategy from Charleston. He had initial success in Savannah, but they got their asses handed to them in Kings Mountain and Cowpen. Which led the British forces to retreat to Yorktown. The French came to help in 1781 and beat the snot out of the British Navy. And the Second British Army lost to the American Revolution. In 1782, the Parliament of Britain voted to end all defense operations in America. And in December of 1782, George III addressed the British throne for independence of the United States. In April 1783, Congress accepted the British proposal, and on September the 3rd, 1883, a Treaty of Paris was signed by Britain and the United States, recognizing the United States and calling for peace between the two nations. This formally ended the American Revolution. So we all know that the 4th of July is Independence Day. Initially it was going to be on July 2nd of 1776. But however, it was delayed for 2 more days. So on July 4th, 1776, the United States declared independence from the monarch of Great Britain, King George III. John Quincy Adams wrote to his wife, Abigail, on the 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epic in the history of America, apt to be believed that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance, the solemn act of devotion to the God Almighty. Ought to be solemnized with pomp, parade, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, for this time forward and forevermore. Adams' predictions was off by 2 days. It was actually not the 2nd of July, but the 4th of July. By a remarkable coincidence, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, only 2 signatures on the Declaration of Independence, later served as presidents of the United States, both dying on the same day, July 4th, 1826, which was the 50th anniversary of the Declaration. We have to understand why these men, these few men, wrote the Constitution of the United States, why they broke away from Great Britain and control, was to give us freedom of speech, to give us hope that no man could stand on our necks. How poignant is that today? When we look around America today and we see how anarchists are burning down our flags, forgetting the fact that their history was given to them by brave men who didn't hide their faces, who stood up to the great British Army. And in those days it was almost epic. It was like fighting a superpower, and yet they beat them. Many of those men went on to become paupers, even though they won the war. They suffered the most. And I'm talking about the War of Independence. When it comes to the Constitution, those men sat down and decided that we need to be free. We don't need communism. We don't need Muslim extremist Sharia law. We don't need liberalism. We were all given free will. And this has been eroded. This nation fought for its freedom. I was looking at a documentary on Poland, on the Solidarity movement, who took on the great Russian army and won. And the other little nations in between, and managed to fight the Russians off by a few brave men and women. Our country is just over 300 years old. And now, what will bring us down is ourselves, not from outside. Our streets look like pit holes now. Our statues are sprayed. Statues of Jesus, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and many others are being destroyed by ignorant people who have no idea about the history of their nation. As for Black Lives Matter, during the Civil War, over 500,000 men either died or were wounded for the freedom of black people. They paid the ultimate price for your freedom. You do not need reparations. They paid with their own blood. I see many of you decided that Robert E. Lee's statue must come down. But if you read the history books about Robert E. Lee, he wanted to free all the slaves. The one that did have slaves was Lincoln. Another thing, Black Lives Matter. In Africa, before the time of Jesus, slavers slaved black people, sold them to Arabs who sold them in markets. And today in Libya, they do the same thing. And I don't hear you complaining. This weekend, 30 people died in Chicago from gun violence from black people on black people. Stats in the United States don't lie. More people are shot that are white by police than any other race. Your excuses are very thin now. Who is feeding you this narrative? Democrats. Look around you. All the Democratic states are pit holes because they want you that way. Who started the Democratic Party? The KKK. Did they just take off their hats and become liberals so you just feed into the narrative and be constantly left behind? How come your children are not going to trade schools? How come the children don't have decent schools in your areas? And why should you have your areas? This is America. You should be able to live anywhere you like and do anything you want. So why are you still living there? Why are you not coming out of there? Why do you want to live there? Black Lives Matter. You are not a color. You are an American. Yes, many of your ancestors came here as slaves, sold by other black people to traders. Some were Spanish, some were white, some were from the Caribbean, but they were traders. And you were just a commodity. And when you came to America, only 1.4% of the population owned slaves. That's a fact. In fact, there were a lot of white slaves here. That's a fact. And for those who do not understand something, Africa is not a color. It is a continent. It consists of 50% Arab people. Morocco, Libya, Egypt, Dubai, Arab Emirates, all the way through Sahara Desert. 40% of Africa is black, and the rest are Nguni tribes. And the rest is mixed races, whites, mixed races, Asians, you name it. Millions of people, millions of languages. I am an African. In fact, I'm an African American. I was born in Africa and became an American. You're not a color. You're better than this. If you feel that you are not worthy of being an American, then you should go back to Africa as a color. But I can promise you, you'll come back to this country, because this is the land of the free, and you can't get better. And this is not a racist thing I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you is, you had a president that was black, not once, twice. You have a housing minister who is black and a surgeon. There is nothing you can't do. Stop fighting the cops and you won't get shot. If the cops give you trouble, call a lawyer. The old days are gone. But don't conquer and divide us. We are not your enemies. We are your countrymen. And today is the 4th of July. Our independence was given to us by the blood of people who were here, who fought Great Britain to give us the freedom to say what we want to say no, not to be forced to have vaccinations or con viruses, and divide our people to fight one another, and poison our children's brains with communism and liberalism and socialism and all these isms. We are free people, and we need to stand together as one nation under God. Not a Muslim God, not a Hindu God, not a Christian God, but God. Because there is no man-made system, because none of you can agree. But the Constitution of the United States was written in the name of God, not in the name of Sharia, not in the non-believing system of socialism and communism. Our moral fibers have decayed because of the Democratic Party and the liberal system that they want to introduce, and they have. By using trade unions in our schools, they have fed nonsense into our children's heads. So now they run down the street, they're disillusioned, foolish children with black masks on, fed by people like Soros and many other companies who don't realize that they're sending donations to these same people who are burning down our cities. I call on all the companies in America to check who you're sending donations to. Because if you're aiding and abetting this system, this is catch-22. You'd be amazed that you may have sent $1 million for donations that went to Black Lives Matter or Antifa, and they burnt down your store or some of your stores. How ironic would that be? To all the people that hate President Trump, can you give me a better solution right now? Joe Biden, who likes to touch little girls and women in public, can't remember his name most of the time. Then you got an opportunity of having Obama back in the White House, his wife, who is a pure racist, who would divide this country even more, and have another traitor in the White House. Is this what you want? We are better than this. We are a nation of colors. No, we are a nation of people. We are a nation of all races. That's what makes America great. Because we can all live together. In one street, you can have a black man, a Chinese man, a white man, a Latino. It doesn't matter. You're all friends, you all get along, your kids get along, and you all go to school, and we all go to work together. And then you'll have a punk come down the street, start screaming and screaming racism. And somebody will say the wrong thing and it escalates into a riot. Yet if that person didn't come down the street, you wouldn't do that. We are not born racists. We are taught to be racists. And we're taught to be racist by politicians. Politicians who cannot see their own color is not important. What's important is that they should look after their communities, which they have not, especially the Democrats. Look at California today. Absolute disgrace, slum. Look at Chicago. The people are dying in the streets every single day, children. This is not the America we want. We want to make America great again. Is President Trump doing a good job? I say yes. Is he perfect? I say no. But can you imagine? Here's one man in charge of 350 million people, trying to fix it all for you, all at once, and being attacked by the Democrats on every lie they think they could get their hands on. Did the Russians feed money to the Taliban to shoot our soldiers? No, it was a lie. Who attacked Benghazi while the Clintons and Obama were in charge? The same people the Clintons and Obama fed weapons to, the Brotherhood. That's a fact. They won't tell you that, but that's a fact. You all forget, Fast and Furious, those same guns came back to the United States to kill our people. The cages that you blame President Trump on were built by Obama. All the illegal aliens in the country that are riding over our children, raping our women, causing crime and run away all the time, are being protected by the liberals in this country. Is that good? Is that what we want? Now I've heard many stories about, and it's coming from the black communities that are saying that black people can't stay together. They don't have mother and fathers. So their moral fiber is no good. I disagree. I agree that fathers should be with their children and grow up with them. I blame the politicians who have not helped to put stable environments in their communities. I blame the politicians for not building trade schools, universities, clinics, drug-free environments, extra policing, and instead of putting the money in their pockets, should have put it into the communities. Diversified the communities. Not all black, not all white, not all whatever. Should be open. And you wouldn't have these problems. If you build it, they will come. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Thank you for listening to me. Tell your children to go home and take the mask off. Black Lives Matter, we know you're being funded by Soros and many other people. Look at what you're doing to your communities. Look at what you're doing to your people. Because it's not like Black Lives Matter that matter. You're hurting your own people. You're hurting your own people. Everybody Step back, go home, enjoy your families. And now come the end of this weekend, consider what's better for all of us than this. And to these people that are manipulating you above with money, think of the end game when this is all over. What have you got left? And who's going to win this war? Not you, them. And one day you're going to turn around and say, what did I do? Now's the time to step back and say no more. And to all the moderates out there and the conservatives that don't want this, stop them. Stand up and say no more. Just like those guys did back in 1777. Just say no more. We're not doing this anymore. You are not breaking this. This is the Hawk. I'm out of here. Please subscribe, like, and share. Thanks. Take care and enjoy your weekend. Happy 4th of July.